March Forward Girl by Melba Patillo Beals. Narrated by Mr. Townsend, AGW, 8th grade ELA. Chapter 8. Into the Real World Outside. Following the awful Saturday in Miss Lisa's pantry, I was committed to learning more about the white world and how it worked. I decided to read the newspaper that was delivered each day to our house. The lives of the white people all around us were written about in that paper. I knew that because Papa would come home and say, "Guess I'll sit down and read about what the white people are doing. They know what we're doing because they spy on us, but they never write about what we're doing." I was determined to know what they were doing too, and to learn from it. In late spring of 1946, I had a severe case of whooping cough, one that doctors thought serious enough to write up in the National Journal. The whooping cough was the first thing that compelled me to venture into a bigger world where there were more white people. I had coughing spells and asthma for years and had been taken to the black doctor at church before, but the persistent coughing all night and wheezing all day finally led Mother to take me to a white doctor's office, where there were many white patients, but only a very few of us. She thought we might have the advantage of more healing information from the white doctor, who had been educated in a different school system. Until that time, I had only seen white people up close at Miss Lisa's house, at the Baptist College Library, in the street, or frowning at me across the store counter if it looked like I was going to touch something. In the doctor's office, I was seated not far from white people for a long time. There was a white doctor in our town who'd recently agreed to see my people. Everybody in our community talked about Dr. James. He had agreed he would treat some black people 2 days per week. The waiting area at his office was divided into two sections. One had tattered chairs, scattered sets of wrinkled magazines, and wobbly tables. There were signs letting us know that colored patients could only sit here. Through double doors and across the banister, where I often peeked, there was a much nicer room. It was well decorated with sweet pictures on the wall, leather seats with gold upholstery tacks, and brightly colored pillows scattered among the couches and chairs. The magazines were neatly stacked on shiny bookcases with metal lamps and colorful shades. Mother and I sat for hours watching Dr. James call many white people into his office, even though we had been first to arrive. After a long wait, he called us in. Sometimes we would wait at Dr. James' office for 5 hours or until 7 p.m. after dark, while the white people often went inside for their treatment when they arrived. Once we were inside his office, Dr. James was nice enough. He looked me in the eye and spoke to me with a kind tone. He examined my chest and throat with a gentle touch. The doctor was the first white person who touched me and treated me kindly, as though I was human, and my health really mattered to him. Still, I never got over the shabby waiting room and the long wait I had to endure before seeing him. He diagnosed me with whooping cough and instructed grandmother and mother to take all of the rugs off the floor and draperies off the windows at our house. He told them I had wet lungs and I could not lie down, even to sleep at night. It was because of those instructions that Grandma kept me up most nights and taught me the alphabet, multiplication, addition, reading, and writing. I loved having grandmother or mother read me stories in the dining room, or Papa seat me on his lap to do math problems or build airplanes at the kitchen table with brother and me. Until September 1946, I had been homeschooled. Although my grandmother didn't call it that or even know anything about that concept, her objective at first was not to educate me, especially for first grade, but to slow me down during the day and to keep me from coughing all night. Because Mother had become a teacher by then, she was able to get grade level books, and Grandma taught me with those. I loved the time with Grandma and all the games we played. It didn't seem at all like schoolwork. Grandma would say, "You're going through this material lickety-split, girl. You seem to have a knack for this. I don't know where you're going with this, but you're gonna give your first grade teacher a run for her money." I had never been to a school except for Sunday school or visiting the Baptist college with Mother. I had never been away from home by myself for as long as a school day. Then, at age 5 3/4, I was registered for the first grade at Gibbs Elementary School. Gibbs Elementary felt very similar to the Baptist College, except the students were much younger at Gibbs. As I walked down the hall, I saw people sitting in rooms, reading books and talking quietly together, doing math problems or sitting in the library. There was an active silence all around me. People tiptoed along the hallway, whispered to each other. On that first school day, as I entered the small, brightly lit first grade classroom, it was a whole new world of young brown people like me and friendly teachers. I was quite unaccustomed to being with so many people at one time. No one seemed as frightened as I felt. They all behaved as though they were happy. "Take your seat and get out your pencil and notepad and place your book bag beneath your desk," the teacher instructed. Grandma had provided me with a new notepad, a sharpened pencil, and colored crayons, which I put on the desk. The teacher wrote the date, September 18, 1946, on a chalkboard. She told us we would learn all names of the days of the week and the months of the year by heart and know how many days are in each month. Each day, we would need to write the date on our pieces of paper along with our names. I raised my hand at this point and said, "Miss Watson, I know mine already. 30 days hath September, April, June, and November. All the rest have 31 except February. It has 28 we find. Unless it's leap year, then it has 29. She smiled slightly, but her voice was not friendly. "Oh my, tell me your name again." "Melba Patillo," I stuttered. "Can you write your name?" "I can print it. I'm learning to write it in cursive." She stared at me and shook her head as she mumbled, "Uh-huh, is that so?" Then she began to talk to the other children about the days of the week and the months of the year that I already knew. Right away I felt bored. "Melba, you're not paying attention." "Oh yes I am. I want to learn new things," I shouted aloud. "Are you certain you know all the days?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And then you start again. 6 days you labor, and then Sunday you worship God." "Oh my," she said. The teacher seemed to me as though she was uncomfortable with me, and then by the end of the week, the other children didn't like me either. Since the teacher said we were to be together for the rest of my elementary school year, it would become even more uncomfortable to me as time passed. No matter what the class was doing, writing names, learning numbers, doing math, if they were doing it today, I had already done it last year. I didn't want to do it all again. I wanted to move on. I misbehaved, becoming nervous and fidgety, daydreaming and moving around as I stared into space. One day I was seated at my desk with my head down, doing my times tables. 6s are my favorite. When a lady walked into the classroom, she reminded me of my mother as she had fair skin, freckles, and long brown hair. "Come with me, Melba Joy," she said. "We're going to take you up to second grade." During the months that I had been in the first grade class, I had felt unwelcome. But that had started to slowly change with my fellow students. We knew one another's names, and I knew who liked me and who didn't. I was sad that I had to leave them now, even though the class was very boring. I'd become accustomed to my desk and to people's faces. It was just before Christmas, and they would be having parties together. I didn't know where I was going or what I was going to do in the new classroom. Would the new people in there know my name? Would they be nice to me? Then the woman, Miss Aldridge, took me down the hallway and made a right turn into another classroom. This room was sunnier, with the entire line of windows to see outside. Some of these children were taller and bigger than I was. Some were smiling. It sounded like I had walked into a birthday party because the children were giggling so much. They had just had their snacks, so the room smelled of peanut butter, crackers, chips, and oranges. They had brightly colored crayons at their desk. A few wore saddle shoes just like mine. I had never been in a room full of so many people who were my color and my size. This is grade 2, Melba. I'm Mrs. Osland, the teacher said. We're going to see how you do here. Maybe you'll like this better. I felt tears rim my eyes. I wanted to cry. I had finally gotten comfortable and learned everybody's name in first grade. I didn't know if the second grade work would be too hard for me. May I go back now to my other class? No, dear. You have to stay with me, said Miss Osland. She pointed, and I looked at the other children in the room as I took the seat she had indicated near the window. When I turned to my right, so they wouldn't see my tears, I could see the trees and flowers outside. I put my book bag under my seat and scooted back in my chair. It was time to write another letter to God. I took out my tablet and began my letter. Dear God, why are you being mean to me? Please gather in your assigned reading circles, Miss Osland said, interrupting my letter. Okay, Melba, come along, and we'll find the circle that fits for you. I wondered what a reading circle was. Some children were seated in a ring at the front of the room with their chairs, and they had had some of the same books Grandma had read me at home. Miss Osland had 3 books and said that she would try me on each of them and see which one was best for me. Then I would read with that group. Join us in reading aloud, she said. I took my seat in the circle. Grandma had made me read the book Miss Osland had once before. I was frightened to read aloud, though. Suppose I messed up. The teacher seemed astonished that I could read through the passages correctly with speed. I read more than my share. Later, she told me that book was for the highest group level, and I would have to study what they had read in the past. But I explained I had read that book a long time ago. At lunchtime, I took my peanut butter and jelly sandwich and carrots out of my brown bag. 2 girls who said their names were Janice and Sadie came over to say hello to me. I took a deep breath and thought to myself, maybe this grade isn't so bad after all. That was the beginning of my life outside my home. With each class, I learned more about the huge world outside. I loved reading and talking with the other students, finding out who they were and where they came from. I wondered what they thought about. Were they like me inside? Did they want to get out of Little Rock too? From the first conversation at recess, though, I knew for certain they had very different thoughts than mine. For one thing, they didn't feel the same way about living in Little Rock or about the prison the white people had created for us. After I complained about everything that the white people had taken away from us, they just looked at me as though it was something they expected and were content with it. They had accepted the way the white people bossed us around. They had tolerated and learned to live with it. They were settling with that as though they couldn't do any better. They did not hate or complain about living a separate life, not drinking out of a tattered water fountain marked colored, not being able to swim in the public pool or to ride on the good seats of the bus. They seemed not to know there were places where we could be free, They did not want to flag down the stork in order to get another place. Two of my classmates said the stork did not deliver me and would not come back to pick me up. I couldn't believe my ears. I had waited a long time for Grandma and God to get me away. The stork was my only way out of here. I cried in the bathroom during the next recess. Why didn't they believe in my stork? What could I do now to be certain I would get away? I had to go home and talk to Grandma. She would know. She would tell me what to do next. I couldn't stop crying, even when we went back to the classroom after recess. The teacher sent me home early with a note and an envelope to give to my parents. After she read it, Grandma and I had a long talk in the kitchen, sitting at the table as she peeled potatoes for dinner. It's up to you, child. Work hard, get your lesson, and trust God. You cannot wait on a stork. Wait on God. But it's taken too long, I screeched with anger. Patience. Have patience, or you will make yourself nuts. You can become really unhappy, or you can go deep inside yourself and know God loves you and you do your personal best. Since God has known you longer, he will listen to you, I said. Tell him I need to leave this place now, right now. Why don't you come with me? Time will pass much faster if you get into your lesson book and make the best grades you can. Surprise your mother, surprise me, and surprise yourself. Go for all A's. Besides, when you trust God, he will give you peace and will answer your prayers in a much larger way than you'd hope. I took Grandma seriously. I dove into my books. When my teacher asked a question, I was the first to answer. I read as many books as I could get my hands on about all sorts of things. Mother cooperated by taking me to the Baptist College Library. Slowly, I grew to realize that therein lie the key to understanding all of the things I needed in order to escape the prison of Little Rock. I was beginning to understand and define a new word: segregation.